welcome. So you brought us some interesting material for today's deep dive. We've got a YouTube transcript, English Fluent podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Improve your English with daily office conversations. And also some bits from the English Leap podcast, the Beyond the Mic segment.
Okay, and both seem focused on using those everyday office chats to, well, get better at English.
Exactly. And since your goal is, getting this knowledge quickly, thoroughly, our mission here is to pull out the really practical strategies and the key vocabulary from these sources, stuff you can actually use right away to communicate better at work.
Like a shortcut, basically.
Think of it like that, yeah. A fast track to feeling more confident, more competent in your professional English.
Got it. So this YouTube video, it sounds like it presents a real situation, someone asking for an assistant.
Exactly, a dialogue. And then they sort of break down the language used, which is helpful.
And the Beyond the Mic piece, what's their angle?
They take a slightly different view. They really highlight the office itself.
Yeah.
The whole environment.
As a learning space.
As a dynamic learning space, yeah. A place that's just there, ready for you to learn from. Plus, they offer some very specific phrases, like ready-to-use tools.
Okay, interesting. Let's dig into that. So this idea that the office is a good place to learn English, that seems to be a common thread.
It really is. Both sources kind of point to this, whether it's, a physical office or online interactions. It's seen as this prime location for practical English learning.
Right. And it sounds like Jerry and Tom from Beyond the Mic, they're quite direct about it, calling it what was it?
A perfect playground and an English training ground. Kind of reframes those simple daily exchanges, doesn't it?
It does. And I like what Sherry says about not needing fancy words or Shakespearean English.
Yeah, that's reassuring, I think.
It really focuses on the practical side, just being able to communicate effectively to get your job done.
And if you think about it, it makes sense. You're already in that context. You're dealing with real situations, real tasks.
It's not abstract learning. It's applied. Like using phrases, simple ones. Could you send me that file?
Exactly. Or let's schedule a meeting. Stuff you say all the time anyway. So the question for the listener then becomes, are you consciously treating those moments as learning opportunities or just letting them pass by?
That's a good point. Okay, so building on that, Beyond the Mic gives specific phrases, powerful phrases, Tom calls them.
Yes, and these are great because they're common, but using them well really can make you sound more fluent and professional.
Like what sort of phrases are we talking about?
Things like, let's touch base later, or can you loop me in on that?
Okay, yeah, I hear those.
And I'll get back to you shortly, or that's a great point, let's take it forward.
And Jerry's point is that these aren't just words, they project something more.
Exactly. Confidence, clarity, professionalism. Even if the phrase itself seems simple, it's like using the right tool for the job.
Can you give an example, like touch base later versus just talk later?
Well, touch base sort of implies a slightly more formal, planned check-in. It sounds a bit more organized, perhaps. Less demanding than talk now.
Right. And loop me in.
That's just a really efficient way to ask to be included, on an email chain or maybe invited to a meeting update. Keeps you informed.
And Tom suggests actually using them in emails, chats, meetings.
Consciously integrating them. It's about active use, not just understanding them when you hear them.
Okay, makes sense. Let's switch gears then to that conversation in the English Fluent podcast. Tony asking his boss for help, for an assistant.
Yeah, this is a good one. It feels very real world. You hear the kinds of things bosses often say in these situations.
Like the initial refusal. The boss mentions several reasons.
Right. Lack of resources, which they explain means money, basically. Being understaffed, the timing is just not right, the bad economy, and it being too risky to hire someone new right now.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. A lot of common workplace concerns packed in there.
Definitely. And those terms themselves, resources, understaffed, they're useful vocabulary right there.
But Tony doesn't just give up, does he? He proposes something else.
Exactly. He pivots. He suggests hiring an intern instead.
Ah, okay. And how does he frame that?
As a way to take some of the weight off my shoulders and give me a hand with projects, but crucially, while keeping costs down.
So he addresses the money concern directly. Smart. It's like negotiation almost.
It really is.
Yeah.
Problem solving within those constraints, acknowledging the budget issue, but offering a cheaper alternative.
Which brings us to the specific vocabulary they break down in that video, Amamira and Marco.
Yes. They go through these phrases from the dialogue and really explain them clearly.
Like, weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, meaning help with work, reducing the burden,
Yeah.
and give me a hand, which they point out is just another way to say help, not literally about your hands.
They gave examples too, right? Like helping with boxes or reports.
Exactly. And I like their examples for timing is just not right. Using things like selling a house or having a baby, situations where everyone understands it's just not a good moment. It makes the phrase stick.
That's helpful. Keep our costs down.
They explained it simply as trying not to spend too much money. And the example was about controlling printing costs, which is, very relatable in an office.
Okay. Now, there was something else at the end of that dialogue. Surprise. When Tony meets the intern, Adam.
Ah, yes. Tony seems surprised. And the hosts, Marco and Emma Mira, they offer an interpretation.
What do they suggest?
They wondered if maybe Tony was expecting a female intern. They float the idea of potential unconscious bias or sexism.
Interesting. It wasn't explicit, just an interpretation.
Just their read on his reaction, yeah. They also mentioned Adam's deep voice, speculating it might mean he's really big and really tall, adding to the unexpected element for Tony, perhaps.
And they defined intern, too.
Yeah, briefly, someone working, often for low or no pay, mainly to get experience. And they touched on how intern experiences can vary a lot, from making coffee to actually getting valuable skills and maybe even a job offer later.
Okay, so we've got these insights from both sources. How can someone listening actually use this? What are the practical steps?
Well, Beyond the Mic have that practice tip of the day, remember?
The journal.
Exactly. Creating an office conversation journal. Writing down English exchanges you have at work, then looking back at them.
That sounds like a really concrete action. Simple, but probably effective.
And Time also suggested reading them aloud or even shadowing.
Shadowing, you mean repeating what you hear?
Yeah, like listening to English office dramas or podcasts and trying to mimic the rhythm, the intonation, the pronunciation. It's good for fluency.
And their main advice was?
Keep it short, keep it real, and make it daily. Consistency is key. Focus on language you actually use or could use.
Got it. Now, another thing Beyond the Mic mentioned was fear. Fear of making mistakes.
Yes, Tom brought that up. It's a really common barrier for language learners, isn't it?
Definitely. And what was Jerry's take on that?
Super important. He basically said, mistakes are part of learning. You can avoid them, and you shouldn't try to.
Right.
And he also made the point that most people, most colleagues, they'll appreciate the effort you're making anyway.
That's probably true. People are generally supportive.
Yeah. And Tom added that actually speaking, even with errors, helps you improve much faster than just staying quiet because you're afraid. Fluency is about progress, not perfection.
Okay, so let's bring this right back to the listener. How do they take all this and, make it work for them day to day?
I think the main thing is to be proactive. Don't just passively absorb this stuff. Make a conscious choice. Say, okay, today I'm going to try and use let's touch base later in an email, or I'll try using loop me in when I talk to my manager.
So actively look for opportunities to use the phrases.
Yes. See your workplace not just as a place to work, but as this amazing free resource for practicing English. Every email, every chat, every meeting is a chance.
Even small interactions count.
Absolutely. Small, consistent steps. Maybe just one new phrase a day or focusing on one interaction. It adds up over time, builds confidence.
All right, so wrapping up this deep dive, the big takeaways seem to be, number one, your office is actually a fantastic place for real-world English practice.
Definitely. Number two, learning and using specific common office phrases can really boost how fluent and professional you sound.
And third, understanding how these phrases work in actual conversations, like the one about the assistant, gives you context and vocabulary.
Exactly. And the practical advice is pretty clear too. Start using the phrases. Maybe try that conversation journal idea.
And crucially, don't let the fear of mistakes stop you from speaking.
Right. That's really the biggest one. Just get talking.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to take away and maybe chew on. Think about a recent English conversation you had at work, or maybe one is coming up soon. Could you consciously try to use just one, maybe two, of the phrases or the vocabulary we talked about today in that conversation? How might actively seeing these daily interactions as learning moments really